and welcome to the first video of our series. We'll be looking at all the different things that we can do to recover from the effects of COVID-19. So with COVID-19, there's been a few things that people have felt have affected their finances and particularly their superannuation. 3 things or 4 things that's happened is there's been markets going along okay and then suddenly drop off. And then it's recovered a little bit since that. Second thing that's happened to people is some have pulled out their money here at the bottom. Other people have changed it to cash at the top. So you could be one or the other, or you've just left it. 2 other things that's happened. One is pre-July, people had the option of taking out $10,000 out of their super to help if they have had a drop in their income, a drop in their work hours of at least 20%. And then the government opened it up that you're allowed to take another $10,000 out after July. So some people have had 3 things happen to their account. The market's dropped. They then took it out at the bottom. Then they took out 10 grand to help, which wasn't their fault, but they needed it. Took out another 10 grand after. What's this done to people's super? It's certainly knocked it around. And you'll read a lot in the news about experts having all their say about how this has affected people's super going forward and what's happened to the superannuation system and how some people are never going to recover. All that stuff you hear, just put all that to the side. We're going to look at ways today of actually recovering a little bit from that. There are variables that you can alter in your superannuation, believe it or not. So first I'll look at some of those things that you can do or alter to make a difference in your super. Then I'll look at a couple of cases of people different ages, different salaries, and what effect it made to them from a numbers perspective. Everyone's going to be different, you're going to be different, and what's going to be important is what is your situation, what can you do, what can you alter, and what difference will it make? Now we can help with those things after this video. At the bottom of the email that's coming out to you, you'll see a response area. So you can just respond to that, ask some more questions. It can be done very low key. You can just send through an email, get an email response, send through your questions by email, or you can give us a call, whichever you would like, and we'll talk through your personal circumstances and look at how you can recover. So what are some of the variables? Asset mix. You're probably thinking, what can I do? You know, my super's just got to recover, I've just got to hope for the best. But the very first thing, as soon as I say it, you probably think, oh yes, of course, asset mix. But what does that mean? It could be low growth to high growth, or low income to high income. So different assets have different characteristics. Some have low growth but high income. Some are very high in growth but very little income. In fact, some of them have no income but they're very high in growth. Some are both low growth and low income, and some are high growth and then they have high income. So you can have any measure of assets responses. So what we might be doing is we might say, okay, at the moment I'm sitting in a sort of a low growth environment or balanced. Can I increase that and go into some high growth? Have I got enough years left ahead of me? Can I handle the risk? Am I going to be able to sleep at night? So there are adjustments you can make there. You might go from low growth to high growth. You might go from lower income to high income assets. So there are some tweaks and adjustments you can do there, and everyone will be different. We need to look at your portfolio, we need to look at what's available to you, whether the current superannuation you're in is able to achieve what you want to achieve and what you want to move to. And then we look at what might be the results on that. Another area is risk. What do we mean by risk? Risk is talking about, in this particular case here, we're talking about volatility. Now some assets do this, don't move much at all. Some move every day, every hour, every second. So when we're talking about risk in this particular case, we're talking about high volatile assets and low volatility, or that extreme, or somewhere in between. So you can make an adjustment to the type of assets that you're holding. For example, shares in Australia, shares overseas, both hold the same volatility characteristics. But if you hold overseas shares, you have another volatility measure in there, such as currency rates. So the overseas investment might be high and doing well, but the currency's moved against you, so when you go to convert it back here to Australian dollars, it's not as much return as what you would have had if you hadn't been living overseas. So added measures of volatility, but sometimes that measure of volatility actually plays in your favour over time. Let's just say you invested a lump sum here, and then you took it out here. That's better than investing it here and taking it out here. So you pull in at a low time, put in at a low time, pull out at a high time. You've made a return. Where here on a low volatile asset might make no difference whatsoever. And that introduces a thing called dollar cost averaging, which most people have heard about. And it's talking about, I can't pick the market when it's going to be up, when it's going to be down, but what I can do is, if I put in a regular amount at a regular time, what happens in a volatile market? When the market's low, we're buying more of the cheaper. When the market's in a high, we're buying less of the expensive, just by putting in the same amount every time. So we're dollar cost averaging. We're putting in the same amount from a dollar perspective, and it averages out the performance. Now what actually happens theoretically over time is, if a market moves purely sideways, up and down like that, we're putting in a dollar cost averaging, we'll still actually be better off than if the market moved flat. If we put in money on a regular basis, the same amount, then if the market moved flat. Here we put in a certain amount of money, we have the same amount at the end. When we're dollar cost averaging, because we're buying less and more at different times depending on how the thing is, when it comes out at the end at the same amount, we'll actually be ahead. That's the way dollar cost averaging works. So it's another strategy we can involve in our super. Timing in the market. Another perspective to look at. So is now a good time to buy into the markets? Is now a good time to buy investment property? Is now a good time to be in cash? So timing can be an important factor. So on your individual case, we'll be looking at what you've got to invest and how is the best way to invest it. Is it right now, or is it split up over a number of contributions over a period of time? That's the timing side of it. And also time in the market. There is a theory that says each year in a market you'll have an up roof and a bottom, and the market will perform somewhere in there between. So you have a risk of putting money in. It could be on the high when you come out at the end of the year, it could be on the low. It does this year on year out. But what actually happens is, if you hold money for a period of time, the theory is that over time it's what we call adjust to the mean. That means over time markets and businesses grow, income grows in the business, and over time if we just hold long enough, we can ride out some of this volatility in the market. And our returns at the end, if we hold long enough, will tend to trend towards the mean. It's not like every year we're going to lose it this year we'll gain it back, then we'll lose it again. It tends to trend towards this mean, just because of the way markets work, dividends work, and so forth. There's different contrary theories about that, but we won't go into it today. Fees. What about fees? Can you change your fees? What are you paying now in your super? How is your fund set up? I had a client just recently, didn't have an advisor, so had no advisor fees. They were paying minimum fees on a fairly good account. But what they didn't realise is that husband and wife together could join their account, become a family unit. Their fees actually halved. So little things you might be able to do about your fees and your superannuation. It could be that the one you're in is just far too expensive. Let's look for something else that can still give you the same range that you want, the same performance, but the fees aren't quite as extravagant. And a lot of funds and investment companies have come to the market recently and have started to reduce their fees because of the exposure from the Royal Commission, from COVID-19 and various other things. So they've started to become more fee conscious, as our clients. So that's something we can look at as well. Even by reducing your fees by 1%, that effectively increases your return by 1%. So if we can't get better returns, we're going to a different fund. Maybe just reducing the fees is enough to make the difference over the long term. Another one is contributions. I'll quickly touch on contributions. Contributions might be, we have a lump sum from doing something, we might have sold a property or something. Is it a good time, or is it a good thing to invest that lump sum into super in this environment and top up our super? Or is it something we can now afford to do on a long-term basis, on a regular basis, that we couldn't before? Maybe the kids have grown up and left home now, we can consider putting a little bit more into super to make up for those losses. So contributions and how we put them in. Do we put them in as a lump sum? Do we regularly contribute extra? Do we put it in after tax? Like out of our money in the bank that we've already paid tax on, got sitting in the bank, left over from all our bills, do we add extra there where there's no tax comes out of it? Or do we self-sacrifice from our work? Pay a little bit extra out of our salary and get a tax deduction on it. So there's different ways that we can do that and look at that, and that will be another adjustment that we can make. And the last one is super or not. Now I was going to touch on a thing called systematic risk. The thing with systematic risk is there's not an awful lot we can do about it. Systematic risk is after we've taken out all the volatility in individual assets, what is happening in a particular industry? Is an industry dying out? If it is, do we want to be exposed in that industry? Or is an industry a go-ahead industry? Like, for example, what's going to happen in pharmaceuticals going forward with things like COVID-19 and that? Are some companies going to make a lot of money? What about logistics? More people are buying and doing stuff from home now because of COVID-19. So I have a client that has their company in logistics delivering parcels is making more money this year than they've ever made, just because they're delivering more parcels and doing more stuff from home. So this is part of systematic risk. Something you have no control over, but what's happening in particular industries and countries and environments and so forth. These are things that little that you do will change anything, but we might be able to make some adjustments on where we invest our money to be in the best possible place to get the growth going forward. And we need a little bit of direction on that. We need a little bit of research. We need a little bit of information. And that's just another adjustment we can make. Even though it's systematic and we don't have control directly over it, we could place ourselves in a position where we can meet the recovery and make more money from it. Super or not? Last one point. Is putting more money into super to recover, is that the best strategy? Maybe for you and your environment, maybe you would have some assets outside of super that have some equity attached to them, or you have some spare cash. You don't necessarily want to put it into super and lock it away and you can't touch it till you're 65. Maybe you have some cash that you can use somewhere to grow outside. So then we start to consider other things. Maybe it's not just all about your super, maybe there's something else you can do to increase your wealth for retirement. Two things I just want to cover quickly. To give you an example of somebody that's done some of these tweaks. We've got a 50-year-old man. He's a blue-collar worker. He earns about $80,000 a year. His children are now grown up, left home, although they're always financially dependent. At least you don't have to worry about putting bread on the table. He has, or did have, $380,000 in super. Due to a drop in the market, it dropped to 228. He lost quite a percentage because he was in a high growth environment. So the shares dropped off and he lost quite a lot of money. It recovered, as in a lot of these recoveries, within a short period of time it usually recovers about 60% and then wavers from then as it tries to find its balance in the real economy. So it come back to about 319. But that's still a big dip, isn't it? 380 to 319. He hasn't done anything else. He hasn't taken any money into super. He hasn't changed his work environment, anything else. He's just worried that now he's got this extra money to make up. What can he do? This gentleman simply does something very simple. He looks at adjusting his fees a little bit, because going forward it looks like the market is, in his environment, instead of doing 9% per year, it's only going to do 8%. So he recovers a little bit of that by adjusting his fees, adjusting the insurance coming out of his super, different other things to make sure that he's made up that extra 1% that he's lost. And then he's decided he can afford to contribute an extra $500 per month. Now this may not be you, but this guy's children's gone, he hasn't got long to retirement, he's got good income, not a lot of things to pay for, he's nearly paid off his house, but he's got an extra $500 a month between himself and his wife he can put away. He decides to sacrifice it into super. Pre-COVID-19, this is the key. He was on track to have 1.698 million in retirement. Due to COVID-19, it dropped to, his retirement benefit would be around about 1.27 million. That's a lot, isn't it? It's a big loss over the long term. In the short term, it doesn't look like a lot, but over the next 15 years until he retires, so he say he's got 15 years to retirement, it's at age 65, we pull his money out. So he hasn't got a lot of things that he thinks that he can do, and maybe he's got to work longer. That's the first thing he thinks about, I've got to work longer. But he actually doesn't. He just adjusts his fees a little bit, gets that 1% back over the long term, it's going to be adjusted. He puts in the extra 500, guess what it does to his portfolio? Turns it into 1.653 million in the same time period. And all he's done is a little bit extra that he's putting in every month and adjusted that fee by 1%. That is a difference of $423,000. Down to his bottom line, he's only $1,766 in income behind per year by doing that. So he's not very far, it's not much difference. He's nearly recovered from doing something simple like that. And then the next one probably you think is more like you. You're younger, just starting off, trying to build your wealth creation strategy. You might be a 35-year-old or thereabouts, but you're earning a good income, $120,000 in IT. Your contributions alone each year are about $1,133 per month going into super. Now, just that to 950. This guy only 120 at 9.5% contributions is about $950 per month coming into super. But the employer's putting in for it. Now what he's decided to do is again look at reducing his fees a little bit, get a bit better performance, but he's currently balanced. So even though it hasn't dropped as much, his superannuation balance, he started at 45,000. It dropped to 36. Guess what? He took out 10 because he could. And then it recovered a little bit. It's back to 29,600. But it's still down a little bit. It's not a lot, isn't it? Not a lot. But that difference in the change in the market and a little bit of the drop meant normally before he would have had about 1.225 million at retirement. He's now going to have 1.132 million. He's dropped a little bit, not a lot. But what he does is he changes his philosophy and decides, okay, I'm going to go into high growth assets or higher growth assets and change that performance back up to say, if I can get closer to 10 to 9%, including a little bit better return, more volatility of course, but we've got longer term, he's got 30 years to go. And what he does is he turns his money into 2.17 million. So all it's done is it's been prompted him to do something a little bit different and he comes out way on top. So these are just examples, everyone's different, the background figures in this will be different for everyone. It's important that if you want to know more how it affects you and what you can do, just respond to that bottom. We'll send you out some more information, we'll send you out some emails backwards and forwards if that's how you'd like to correspond. And we'll try and help you recover from COVID-19. Now we look forward to speaking to you again in some other videos from this series, all about recovering. And we wish you all the best in the future. Thank you.